You could open an account with me at Morgan Stanley over the phone with no ID. And you could actually invest, and you didn't have to pay for a week. So I could call you up on the phone, and you could say, sure, I want to buy 100 shares of Microsoft. I'll say, okay, great, I'll get your name, your date of birth. I don't even think we did social. And your address. And I'd say, okay, pay me within a week. That was it. That's how you open a brokerage account. They didn't have to sign anything. I didn't need their ID. This is all, I'm not that old. This isn't that long ago. You know, this is in recent history. And remember, credit cards have only been used the last 30 years or so. I mean, they've been around 50, 60 years, but you know, I remember 30 years ago, it was very rare. You know, movie theaters, no movie theaters accepted credit card. Restaurants, it was kind of unusual, only high-end ones. You know, travel agents would, but nothing like now. Now everything is credit cards, debit cards. So there's this huge paper trail. Governments have gotten this idea that, you know, they have a business to do this. But I think this technology is going to be a really exciting way to smack them back. I mean, where they were, smack them back to where they were 30 years ago, that would be a start. Ideally, we want to smack them off the board entirely. And I think that at the end of the day, what this technology does, it enables you to say now, to say no, no thanks, in a way that is not violent, that is peaceful. You just kind of move out of the way, like Muhammad Ali, and they're going to be punching the air. And eventually, they're going to come crashing down like a sumo wrestler who overstepped on the line. They're going to come crashing down into their own weight. And these systems are going to have a massive blow to banking and government financial systems. It's going to be a huge, huge, huge thing for liberty. And I think that's really, really something to be excited about. So, I'm going to I have plenty of time for questions. Go ahead and I can answer anything about the Bitcoin blockchain, anything like that. Go ahead.
What's the difference between the Winkle? Sorry.
Oh wait, go ahead. Can you play that video? I got a quick video I'll show you just to close before I do the questions. I think you get a quick episode. Let me just set the stage for it. You remember when the government shutdown? It was a horrible, tragic thing in 2012, with that government shutdown that lasted 30 days. Probably nobody remembers it. But at the time, it was horrible, scary thing. So I was so traumatized that I made this quick video. Let me just show you real quick. So I want to talk a little bit about today's news. It says the government might shut down. The government. My roads. Never forget that fateful time. Could happen again.
First of all, is that on YouTube?
That is on YouTube.
Okay, well, I'll have to look it up.
There's also one called Economic Geek Fights Keynesians. That's kind of funny. Or if you, for us anyway.
Yeah, so what's the difference? I think I know, but could you explain the difference between what the Winkle Loss Twins are doing and like just a stock like GBTC?
Sure. So GBTC is a slightly different vehicle. Barry Silver is a really experienced Wall Street operator, and he wanted to get, pretty smart, he wanted to get kind of first to market. So he basically made a type of offering that could be publicly traded that holds Bitcoin. But he can only hold certain amounts, and you can't, when you have shares that are out there, like Apple shares, if I go to buy Apple shares, I'm not buying new Apple shares, I'm buying somebody else's Apple shares. Only if Apple issues new shares, which they almost never do. I don't even know when Apple has done it. It's probably been ages. You know, other than weird examples like employee options and stuff. So it's just there. So you can buy more Apple shares, but you're they're not new shares being issued. So with GBTC, that exists now. You can trade, but you'll notice it trades at a premium because it has a finite supply. There's only a certain amount of Bitcoin in it, and there's ways that you can kind of add more Bitcoin, and they've done that a little bit, but bottom line, it's not as good as an ETF, where an ETF, it has whatever's in it, and every dollar that's put, there's no limit on it. Whatever is put in, you can put in. If it starts with 100 million and they put in another 100, guess what? They're gonna have to buy 100 million of Bitcoin. And if it goes crazy and the price goes up to 3,000 or 4,000, people are gonna see that, and they're gonna buy it, and they're gonna honor those orders. There's no such thing as ETF where they say, oh, sorry, we ran out. They can't run out of Bitcoin. As long as one person in the world is willing to sell one fraction for any price, which they are, I'll sell a fraction of one for some price, then that will, that will exist. So the ETF is really exciting because, although, I have mixed feelings about it. I actually thought about doing it myself. I think it's a great idea. If I would have known it was going to take them so long, I would have tried myself and banged my own head against the wall with regulators trying to do it. So I think it's a great idea, and I wish them all the best. But it is a buggy whip. You're building a better buggy whip for when in an age of horses, when cars are coming around the corner. And so we're not going to need ETFs. That ETF may be a great thing, just like AOL was a great thing for 5 years, but long term we're not going to need that. Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, Bruce. Okay. So earlier at this conference, I actually talked about how terrible the ETF would be for the Bitcoin system. And I thought maybe you can comment on my reasons for that. I have hours and hours of video, but I'll just sum it up real quick. One of them is it centralizes Bitcoin in one giant honeypot that risks getting hacked like Mt. Gox moral hazard. Another huge problem is that people don't really own the Bitcoins. They are owned by an entity. That entity is under the control of the government in question. In this case, it would be the US government, which could then come in and just say, oh, it's ours now, and we have 10%, 15% of all Bitcoins. Those are just some of the reasons. I have a lot more. Maybe you can comment on some of those.
Yeah, those are good points. The honeypot thing is real. Hopefully we move beyond the days of Mt. Gox. Hopefully we have better quality controls and better systems in place. Hopefully the Winklevoss brothers are taking it, much more seriously. it's a whole different level of professionalism and everything else. Better practice, but yeah, that is a risk. Not only your own Bitcoin, that's absolutely true, and that's the same argument that you have with ETFs. Like I said, there's people here, I'm sure, who own gold ETFs, but you don't really own that gold. And it is if you're comparing it to Bitcoin, it is a far distant alternative. I agree with you on that. It's nowhere near as good as real Bitcoin. But overall, I think it will help. I hope I'm right. And we don't know if it'll even be approved. I don't know if time will tell. Certainly, if there is some kind of catastrophic issue with a hack, that would be bad. Government seizing it, yeah, of course, definitely. That you are. When I say it's good, I'm mainly talking it's good because there's a million or so people that buy Bitcoin, and there's 100,000 who are really kind of active in it, and then there's a couple thousand who are really active in it, and then there's some number of dozens like you who are really into it. But there's tens of millions of people out there who just, as a former financial advisor, the barrier to move from Morgan Stanley to Merrill Lynch is huge. It's so huge, in fact, you can make $1 billion if you can get people to do it. You can become, anybody in this room can become a billionaire. All you have to do is convince people to move their accounts from Fidelity to you, or Charles Schwab to you, or Merrill Lynch to Morgan Stanley. You get a job at Morgan Stanley, you can make $1 billion. And you don't need all of Fidelity's accounts. You need one tiny sliver of 1%, and you can become a billionaire. If you get 100 people who are millionaires to move their account over in your entire career, you're going to make $300,000 a year. Just from 100 people. And there's tens and tens of millions. So it's very hard to get people to switch from one thing to another. And then the burden, I love Coinbase. I open a Coinbase account, I open a Mt. Gox account, I open all these accounts. I'll do it easily, instantly. But the people who buy this are not the normal people. The normal dentists who have a couple $1 million in their Merrill Lynch account, it's an insurmountable hurdle for them to open up, to go from Merrill to Morgan Stanley. I spent my whole career at Morgan Stanley just trying to get people to move from one firm to another, to go from Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, Charles Schwab to some crazy thing like Coinbase. It's just an insurmountable hurdle for most people. And what the ETF will do is enables them to do it in a system that they're used to. Now, I don't like the system that they're used to. I agree with you. I don't like that system. That's why I left that system. I broke out of that system and dedicated to this better new system. But it does still exist, so it'll be like AOL. It'll be, AOL is not the real internet, but it'll be a nice stepping stone, hopefully, for people to move forward. And your other point about government being easy, absolutely is true. But it's also true. Everybody in that system, you have basically the whole world, and you have this tiny little number of people in cryptocurrency. We have our money, and we actually own our money, but nobody else does. So the ETF will have drawbacks where the government can just say, I'm taking your money. But they can do that now with a gold ETF or a silver ETF or a Microsoft stock. They seize money all the time. We had clients get their money seized. It was always the worst thing ever was when somebody would get their money seized from the IRS. I personally had to write millions of dollars worth of checks to the IRS because we'd get seizure letters where a client, they'd say, it's not their money anymore, it's our money. And I had to call clients and say, hey, sorry, the guys with guns are taking your money. And nothing I could do. I mean, I couldn't even physically stop it if I could. I didn't have like there's no override switch on my computer. It's basically just a note that's like, hey, just as a courtesy, we're letting you know that your client's money's gone. Kind of check.
How nice.
So that is a weakness of the system, but that's the thing where in this new world, those systems are going to be smashed and destroyed because I think hopefully people go into ETF, whether the ETF works or not. Eventually, hopefully, this superior technology of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain, altcoins, that will work. And when it does, you won't need any of this, and then they won't be able to seize the money. Other questions? In the back.
We have the mic over there.
Okay, you first, then you. Okay.
Thank you for the talk. You mentioned Patrick Byrne over at Overstock. I wanted to see if you could give us any information if you know about it about T0, the trading platform that he's building, the blockchain-based like certificate stock trading.
Sure. I can talk a little bit about it. I'm pretty close with those guys, and I don't want to accidentally say anything that's confidential, so I don't want to get too detailed. But basically, I can channel Patrick for a minute, which is the old systems that I alluded to a little bit are really messed up. Nobody actually owns your own stock. I mean, like Tom said, they can seize it. Well, the truth is one step worse. You never actually owned it in the first place. If you have an account at Charles Schwab or Merrill Lynch or Fidelity or anybody else, any real investment firm, you don't actually own it. When you sign your paperwork, you have those pages and pages of paperwork that you fill out at the end. What that says is a big complex thing. And I'm not talking about hypothecation where you own your shares for your margin. I'm talking about the actual name that those shares are registered in. If you buy shares in a startup that somebody has, you actually have shares that have your name on it. Your name is not on any shares anywhere if you have Apple stock in a Fidelity account or a Merrill Lynch account. It's held through this very complex system where this company called CD & Co. really owns everything in its name, and this company DTCC does all the settlement, and there's all these different things, transfer agents, and it's a big, messy, complex system. And what Patrick and T0 believe, by the way, T0 and Medici is a division of Overstock. Overstock, as you know, is a leading retailer, online retailer, great company. And Patrick was the CEO, who's one of us also, was very interested in this technology early, and he accepted Bitcoin and did some other things. And so they've actually created a whole division. They've made investments in companies like Bit and others, where they're looking to disrupt this. They're looking to disrupt this system and say, we don't need this big complex system. We can have people actually own what they own. So they're working on realizing that model that I mentioned, which is to have people actually own their own stuff. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not a real sophisticated investor. I'm just learning about Bitcoin, and it's talking about ETF. If it were to happen, and the atomic bomb were dropped on the ETF, in other words, the government were to seize everything, those that would skyrocket the price, which it would not. And then a follow-up question to that, if they could get their hands on all Bitcoin, it would just mean that the people that had sold their Bitcoins to the ETF would then, would have gotten paid for the Bitcoins they own, and then you could just, there'd be another cryptocurrency to go into, right? It would just destroy Bitcoin, but it wouldn't destroy the market.
So the way it works, so there's two risks. I mean, I think what you might be talking about is there a risk where the government suddenly says, okay, to screw Bitcoin, we're going to take the Bitcoins. I think that's very, very unlikely, really. I mean, as bad as they may hate Bitcoin or decide they want to kill Bitcoin, there's a lot of other ways that they would try to do that. Despite all of our issues in the U.S., we have been pretty good about property rights and laws. It would be completely unprecedented for them to just seize all of the assets of all of the people who own the ETF. I can't even think of anything even close to that has happened. You never know. There's always a first time for anything. But I don't think that's really a big risk. The bigger risk is that somebody says they don't like this particular guy because he didn't pay his taxes or he sold something to the plant or something. They take his. But that's a risk that he has at anybody in the mainstream system. You have that risk of your Fidelity. They don't care whether it's Bitcoin ETF or gold ETF or Microsoft stock or the Fidelity Growth Fund. They're just going to take it. And when they took it, they would own shares in that ETF. They wouldn't actually own the underlying Bitcoin. So it is isolated one more step. So they have the shares in the ETF. The government, in those cases, they typically just auction it or get rid of it or liquidate it. And they do that all the time. They do it hundreds and hundreds of times a year. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Despite all the faults that they have, I don't think that there's a big systematic risk to Bitcoin itself from that. Just the main risk that you would have by being part of the old broken corrupt financial system. But like I said, with this technology, it's a great way for us to non-violently and very easily say, no thanks, no, F you, we're going to do a better way.
Bruce, there's one
On top of these guys down here. Any, one last quick question? Sure.
I read the news article that SpaceX was a two-man on the moon, and I was wondering how we can beat them and get towards the moon.
How do we do?
How to beat SpaceX because they want to put two men on the moon.
And we want to get Bitcoin to the moon?
And I want to say that actually I guess it's like Bitcoin. Well, like the usage of it, so people who really need Bitcoin. In my opinion, it's like people make sweat out there last year and this is like $2 worth of money. And the government is it's really big capital. Considering all the technical knowledge you kind of need to really use Bitcoin, I mean, like you hold, right? It's not like you invest in ETF. How do we going to make that easier for people?
Well, the good news is there's a lot of people working on it to make it easier. Wallets are easier. When I bought my first Bitcoin, it was like a 10-step process. I had to wait 10 days. I had to go through the wallet and then get the money in wherever. And the first year before me, it was even harder. Now it's pretty easy. You can open a Coinbase account on your phone and you can do it. So it is getting easier. And I'd say, how do we get to the moon? Just keep doing what we're doing. It's been slower in some ways than it could have been, but it's also been pretty extraordinary. We're the 48th largest currency in the world now, and we see exciting things. And like I said, the toothpaste can't be put back in the tube. That Bitcoin store in Cambodia is just going to get shut down someday. Very unlikely. If they are, there's two others that can take their place. So it's a really great way to destroy these old systems without firing a second shot. Excellent. Thanks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Presentation. I wanted to ask you, I didn't get to ask the question, and I didn't quite understand part of what you said, that there could be a catastrophe with the U.S. government collapsing or something. I don't know. And and I wasn't sure how you were thinking it, and why would that happen? What's the key? Why would the currency collapse or something?
I don't think I said that. I'm not sure what it was. I've got to get back up here.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
go
get
ahead.
back up here.
And anyone else is going to be on the panel? Or Bruce, you're going to be on the panel by yourself?
It's me.
I'll turn it over to you and you can continue from there.
No, I'm not gonna let him steal all the thunder.
Yeah, let's see. Rick was going to join it and Roger. So, yeah, so I guess we have to continue our Q&A.
I got a question.
So there are places like Ecuador, apparently Colombia, that ban Bitcoin. Is it
Were they banned Bitcoin, you said?
Yeah, I understand Ecuador banned Bitcoin, and someone just recently told me Colombia did as well.
Colombia and Ecuador.
Does anyone know what's happening? Because it seems like, how do you keep people from using Bitcoins?
Sorry, I was distracted for a second. So your question is it banned in Ecuador and...
No, it is banned in Ecuador.
Okay.
And I believe, I just recently heard it's banned in Colombia.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering, 'cause, you know, you said in your talk that Bitcoin, this technology gives you the option of saying, nah, right? So, you know, you can use the Colombian, I don't know what it is, they're not the Ecuadorian, you just say, nah. And who's to prevent you from saying nah? If it's from my phone to your phone.
Well, governments, like I said, aren't that right, but the smarter of them realize that they really want to stop it. And I've been in these meetings with regulators where I've tried to educate them. They wish they could stop it, but the smarter of them realize they can't. So they kind of pretend that they're like innovation. They say, oh, well, we're going to let you have your innovation. Only because they have no choice. So the governments that have banned it are really short-sighted because it's just not going to work. There's no method that anybody has to block it or stop it.
Trying to ban gravity.
Yeah, trying to figure out. When I was executive director of the Bitcoin Foundation, I did a volunteer job for a year. I did a year term. We get, emails and stuff where people would say, how do we, enforcement would say, how do we stop this? We want to seize these coins, or we want these coins. They assume that we're some kind of authority. There is no such authority. There's nobody who really has the power to do that.
Right, but you can like ban businesses from publicly advertising the fact that they accept Bitcoin, right?
Well, I'll jump on that. Yeah, you're right. You can. There's two ways. I personally have two concerns, and one of them is going to be very weird. So let me go through that in a second. So the first one is what I asked Bruce earlier during his presentation. If the Bitcoiners aren't fighting hard enough to make sure people are holding on to their own Bitcoins and keeping it decentralized, and if every use of Bitcoin is through a centralized institution, like a Bitcoin bank, like a Coinbase, like the ETF, then they can't take control of that system. Like if there aren't enough of us that are willing to run our own nodes, that are willing to hold the Bitcoin by ourselves, then it's not really all that different. The other thing is the government can totally stop Bitcoin. All they have to do is remove laws on voluntary contracts, legalize gambling, legalize prostitution, remove all money laundering laws. Like the only reason why Bitcoin exists is because our money is being censored. If the government drops censorship on the US dollar, then Bitcoin basically becomes a hedge against the collapse of the dollar. It doesn't really have any additional advantages in the payment system. So there are a couple of things they can do. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they'll go in the opposite direction. But there are things they can do to slow down Bitcoin.
Question regarding some of these scams. I'm doing a lot of work in Africa right now, and one of the biggest hurdles is the MMM, OneCoin, and a lot of these folks are taking advantage of folks who are trying to, these pyramid schemes and things. So I guess as a community, what can we do to better inform it? Adoption is our biggest obstacle. It's not just getting people to use it is what we're trying. We want to make it really something that empowers regular folks.
Sorry.
If they get approached by 3M and they're saying, look, give me this money, we're gonna make you rich. I'm not saying that to them. I'm just trying to really figure out how can we use blockchain so they can, minimize the fees and all these things. How can we work together to deal with that issue of those scammers?
That's a great question, Joby Weeks. And I've been in network marketing my whole life, since I was 14 years old. And I've watched the deal of the decade come by every week. People pitching me nonstop. And I've looked at the MMM out of Russia. A lot of the scammers want Bitcoin because once they get paid, they disappear and you can't charge back like you would with a credit card or something. It's hard to catch these guys. Create a scam, Ponzi scheme, whatever, and then rebrand it 3 months later after they take everyone's money and do it all over again, and rebrand it, take everyone's money and disappear. And so I always kind of analyze them and say, okay, well, what's the actual product that this company or this organization is selling? Is there an actual product? Because there's a huge difference between legitimate MLM network marketing and just a money game Ponzi that disappears. And so whatever the thing is, what's their product? What kind of value? When people buy that product, whether it was sold through the pyramid or sold at Walmart or sold online, is it a legitimate product that people would, does it compete? A lot of these things are like, we're going to sell you an ebook, for $250,000. And you're like, what? It's an ebook. It doesn't cost me a shit for anything. Like, well, because we're paying out all this commission for all this and blah, blah, blah. And, well, Harvard charges $250,000. Harvard's legitimate. That's education. So why can't this ebook be? And you sit there and you're like, this is just a money game. Whether it's OneCoin, I've got a lot of friends that have pitched me OneCoin or other. And, we fight the same skepticism. And in our club's called Bit Club, and I'll talk a little bit about Bitcoin mining in the next section. But yeah, that's a legitimate question. Find out what the product is, find out if it's got value. People would normally buy it if it wasn't part of the pyramid. If they wouldn't, then they're probably just in the thing to play a money game, and they wouldn't actually, consume the product.
What shares part? You buy a piece of shares to mine. I'm not sure.
I'll get into that later. I'll get into that after.
So, yes, sir, I agree absolutely with you that adoption is a problem, and there are scams. I mean, Bitcoin is being used for what regulators would call contraband trade. I was up in a panel in a conference called The Future of Money, and I'm going to relate a little bit of that just as an argument for everybody here to bring back with it. And I was up against a governmental financial regulator who was really angry with Bitcoin because he couldn't regulate it, right? He was trying to regulate gravity. So he said, Bitcoin is being used for all these illegal activities. They're being used for, it's being used for drug trade, it's being used for trafficking, it's being used for, this chair, it's being used for all kinds of things we don't want. It's used for drugs, for blah, blah, blah. And so on. And so I got the mic, just smiled a little and talked to the audience and said, yes, sir, you're absolutely right. So as I understand it, your opposition to Bitcoin rests entirely on the fact that the US dollar has never been used for narcotics trade. So yeah, it's public perception. It is a currency, and since it is a currency, it will be used for scams. Governments are jumping on this to discredit Bitcoin, but that there's a high and a low risk for everything. They are talking about the bad things they think will resonate with the public, like drug trade and trafficking and whatnot. But the reason they're talking about this is they can't regulate it. Adoption is all about public perception. And my standing point here, we can turn their own words against them. Right one to one.
Plus, Tom has a pretty awesome scale alert podcast he's been doing.
Well, right. Well, my podcast probably wouldn't cover the scams you're talking about because they're fairly obvious. It's just a matter of fighting them. And I'm going to second what Rick said. That's exactly what I was going to say. And it actually goes to show how valuable Bitcoin is because all of these scams are now utilizing Bitcoin because it's a better form of money for them to run their scams. So this is actually, I think it's bad for the people being scammed, but it's a huge positive for Bitcoin. So that was the comment that I was going to say. And you fight them the way you always have. Just educate people that there's no such thing as a free lunch. That's the problem in the Bitcoin space. Early people that mined Bitcoin basically ended up with a free lunch, but there were so few of them. And now Bitcoin mining is difficult, as Joby will probably be talking about later.
Yeah, to add what Rick said on yeah, a lot of cloud mining. There's only a couple legitimate cloud mining things. So if you run into cloud mining, by the way, OneCoin, you mentioned OneCoin. If you haven't heard of OneCoin, you should know about it. It's definitely a scam, and they're targeting a lot of people like seniors, and they're very, very, very clever and pervasive in the market. So spread the word on your social media that OneCoin is absolutely a scam. But to follow up on what Rick said about, I get asked all the time, isn't Bitcoin used? Wouldn't Bitcoin make it easier for criminals to launder money and engage in all of these things? And I say, absolutely, definitely. And the regulators kind of look at me like this and they say, well, so do shoes. Shoes make it really easy. Without shoes, how would you mug somebody? It would be hard to run away. Without mobile phones, it would be hard too. So you can make things easier for criminals because it makes it easier for everybody. That's what good technology does. Other questions?
Hi there. I got a question for all of you. You can answer it with Limestone Finance. And our subscribers ask us, what's the best wallet for your phone, both in iOS and on Android? And the second question is, what's the best trading platform for in Canada to trade Bitcoin online?
I guess we'll start from this side and go down. So I have used several Bitcoin wallets at this point. You don't have to take my opinion for this, but I'll just tell you what I use. I use the Airbitz wallet, and the CEO of Airbitz will be speaking here later today, Paul Pui. And that's the mobile wallet I use. I have never owned an iPhone, so I've only used it on Android. I believe it's a very good wallet for the iPhone as well, though I've never actually used it. As far as trading platforms, there aren't many. I do not trade my Bitcoin. I find my Bitcoin too valuable to trade. The risks are too high. There's always a chance of the exchange being hacked. Most of them are regulated. There's a chance that you just walk away with your money. I cannot give advice on any Bitcoin trading platform. People might hate me, but if you want to be a trader, I prefer regulated exchanges, which is why I still trade in the traditional way.
Yeah, I like a lot of wallets. I hate to pick out ones because I'm friends with all the founders of them, but the Airbitz is a good one. I like blockchain. I use blockchain a lot because it's very simple. If I'm demoing Bitcoin to somebody, I use blockchain. Mycelium is good. The latest versions aren't quite as good. What else am I missing? There's a bunch of good wallets. Just be careful. Look at sites like Bitcoin.org to make sure that it's a real wallet. But as long as it's a real wallet, most of them are pretty good. As far as exchanges, I think Coinbase is a bit open in Canada. I'm pretty certain it is. What's that? Oh, you can't trade? I'm not sure. I have to send somebody who knows more about Canada.
For me, I used to give out people's to get a wallet instead of an exchange. Launching that info, and after a bunch of 100 of my friends that I all gave a Bitcoin to, because Bitcoin was $1 Bitcoin when I got into it, so I was handing people out full Bitcoins back then. Now I send them 0.000001 Bitcoin. I'm not going to give you full Bitcoin. But people lose their phone or they forget their password, and it's gone. And 25% of the Bitcoins out there are locked in wallets that we can't even get to. So I stopped going to giving them straight to the wallets because they have to be educated. You gotta kind of, I look at the average people in society as like pigeons, right? You take a little crumb of bread and you throw it at pigeons, get closer, you throw it at pigeons, get closer, throw it, get closer. If I take a loaf of bread and I whip it at the pigeons, they fly away. But you can't just take a loaf of bread and can't throw up on people and explain everything about Bitcoin. It's way over their head. So I try to keep it simple. And what I do currently, people always give me flack for it, but I do it because I make money doing it. And here's how it works. Coinbase will pay us $10. When we give a friend our Coinbase affiliate link, just kind of how like Uber will do it. I've been riding Uber for free for 2 years. Why? Because I have a little link that says, invite a friend to use Uber, your friend's first ride is free. So I send that link, when my friend takes a free ride on Uber, I also get a free ride on Uber. I think it's stupid to pay for Uber when you can get it for free. So I'm taking 50, 60 rides for free just by giving out that free link. Same with Coinbase. So what I do is I give them my Coinbase link, and let's say I take 10 people, and I give them all my Coinbase link, and I say, here's $1 worth of Bitcoin. See, that was really cool. So many people, they've heard about Bitcoin, they've seen the video about Bitcoin, and you're like, well, do you have any Bitcoin? And they're like, no. And you kind of wonder, okay, they've heard it, they've seen it, they've watched what we're doing with it, and yet they still don't have any. Why is that? Why is it so hard to get people to take action? Because knowledge is not power, it's in the application of that knowledge. And what I'm finding is I have to literally physically grab people, sit them down, I'll wait, download the app, I'm waiting, no, don't do it later, I'm sitting here watching. Okay, you got the app downloaded, boop, boop. So if I give 10 people $1, I got $10. But the deal is, if 3 of those 10 people decide, hey, I got a wallet app, I'm gonna connect my Chase account or whatever to it, I'm gonna do a buy for some Bitcoin, they buy, let's say, $100, they get $10 of Bitcoin for free, and so do I. So if I get that $10, $1 to 10 different people, 3 of those people do a buy for Bitcoin, I get $30 back. I give away 10, I get 30 back. I give away 10, I get 30 back. I'm tripling my money, I'm tripling Bitcoin. The more people that use Bitcoin, and the more businesses that accept Bitcoin, the more valuable Bitcoin's going to become. So that's what I do. I start people slowly with Coinbase, and if they lose their password, which they always do, Coinbase has control of the wallet instead of them, so they can get back into their accounts, and then they can get to their Bitcoin, and then maybe down the road, I'll teach them about mining, teach them about having a wallet outside of the exchange.
Oh wow, so what after that, what wallet do I use as well? So I'm the kind of person, once I find something that works, I need a really good reason to change to something else. So I got into Bitcoin kind of early. That means I'm using one of the early wallets for Android. That's Andreas Schildbach's Bitcoin wallet. I think it's just called Bitcoin wallet because the icon is the regular Bitcoin icon. I've also looked a bit at Mycelium because it has something called BitID, which is, if you haven't looked into this, this is an awesome authentication method. It's a public key, 2-factor authentication challenge response that has the best usability of any login method I've ever seen. Shows a QR code on your monitor, you point your phone at it, and boom, you're logged on. You have the secret keys, nothing, you can't be easily impersonated unless your phone gets lost in the snow. Which brings me to the next point. No wallet is safer than its user. No wallet is safer than its phone. Back up your keys. We're talking about exchanges here. I want to make a point that was not part of the question about which keeps repeating authenticating as a public service announcement. If you don't hold the private key to your Bitcoin, it is not your money. Don't keep money in exchanges unless you're going to trade it. That's how I lost a metric fuck ton of money. I think that's the SIE, just metric fuck ton, on empty blocks once at a time. So, it's the same thing with regular banks. People think that when they deposit money in the regular bank, it's their money. It's not. They hold a claim to the bank, and they're going to be last in line when that bank goes belly up. If you don't hold the private keys, it's not your money. You hold a claim to somebody and they might disappear. So I don't actively trade anymore, but when I'm buying things, it could be on Coinbase, it could be on Kraken, I tend to go for convenience, so I'm going with whatever allows me to buy Bitcoin with a credit card basically and have it instantly.
Just a very quick comment. I just want to record that I completely happen to disagree with everything Joey said. I do not use Bitcoin in that way. I do not recommend Coinbase. In fact, I plead with people to get off Coinbase. If people really need to use Bitcoin, they will figure out how to secure it, how to protect it, and if they lose it, then they lose it. It's a valuable lesson. I don't like my Bitcoin to be centralized by an entity like Coinbase that has your password and can Bitcoin like the bank can. Just a side note.
Hi, simple question. Can you give me opinion about value of the Bitcoin? Where does it come from? Like, where is it? Why Bitcoin has value? Value.
Where's the value come from? So the value comes just, where does the value of the dollar come from? Or euro, or gold? Yeah, well, anything has value based on what people think that it has value for, whether it's barter, a car, or this building, or whatever. There's value comes from
Limited
people
supply.
see the value. I think Rick has a better answer than I do.
Bitcoin's value comes from two specific properties. It is useful and it is scarce. That's all there is to it. Something that is useful and is scarce will have value. Now, money was always an illusion. The printed money from central banks, the idea that this holds value was always an illusion. But to quote Joe Matonis on this, who might be quoting somebody else in his turn, governments always knew that the value of money was an illusion. But they could never fathom the day when they would no longer be in control of that illusion.
That's right.
And I look at, there's 5 billion people out there that don't have bank accounts. There's 2 billion people out there that can't even prove they exist, right? I mean, these people are the left behind. That's why they're in the third world. The banks have denied them access to do business with the first world, right? So, unless they're going to get screwed, and you know how much it costs to send money to Western Union and MoneyGram and how long a wire takes. And Hong Kong, California, waiting 3 days is a $45 wire fee. So what kind of value is it if I can move that same amount of money instantaneously? I can do 10,000 transactions by the time a wire goes through with Bitcoin. So the velocity of money is speeding up. And now we can do business with all these people in all these countries around the world that we've been blocked from doing business with. That's valuable. So I think, once the world, that tipping point, if you guys ever read that book, The Tipping Point, everybody figures this out. We're looking at a $10,000 Bitcoin, guys. So, if not more. I think 10,000 probably by the next halving. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a good probability of 10,000 by the next halving. That makes sense to me. I haven't really looked deep into my charity numbers. I haven't really thought about it. I'm trying not to get too much about myself. I'm also thinking too, this is why Bitcoin has value, though it's slightly different than risk. The finite property is helpful, but that's not, I don't think that's the main, it helps it get to a higher value. But as far as it has value, I break it down into 2 things. One is utility and one is speculation. And they're a little bit different, it's a tug of war. So, like I mentioned earlier, Bitcoin has utility, and the government can remove that utility by removing laws on voluntary contracts and removing laws on money laundering laws. That's the utility. The utility is censorship resistance, and also it's not perfectly fungible, which is anonymous, but it's anonymous enough. It's not perfectly immutable, but it has been immutable up to this point, and we're hoping that it will get even more immutable. So those are the utility aspects of it. There's also a speculative aspect in the fact that it can be easily traded in the open market, and people like me that hate using Bitcoin because it's too valuable, I'd rather use the fiat money. I don't like spending my Bitcoin, I want to hold on to it as long as I can. So I'm a speculator of Bitcoin more than I'm a user of Bitcoin. And speculators factor in, and also traders. We know the ETF decision is coming, so there's extra volume pumping Bitcoin up for a good decision. And same thing happened in 2015. So it's a tug of war between those 2 things. And they're both doing very well right now for Bitcoin.
Bruce, this question is for you. I believe you said that the Winklevoss Bitcoin ETF must have the Bitcoins in there, because of government regulated. But we have many other ETFs do not have what they say, like the gold ETFs and precious metals, and they're supposed to have a physical gold or precious metal to back it up. They don't have anywhere near enough if people wanted to, have their gold delivered. So what keeps them from fractionalizing that Bitcoin ETF, just like they would with with something that's more, easier to substantiate whether they have it or not. Like the Comex Exchange, all those, they don't have it. They could never, satisfy everybody, just like if everybody went to the bank, it would collapse. Trying to get out their actual currency.
I'll answer that real quick. The only thing that's keeping it is regulation, right? I mean, regulation allows current ETFs to hold X amount or none at all. Those are usually known as ETNs, exchange traded notes. Those will never hold anything. But it's regulation, right? So if the Winklevoss are filing their ETF, I haven't even looked at the prospectus yet, but if their filing says that they will have 100% backing, and that's the filing that's being regulated by the SEC, then they have to give 100% backing. They can always file new paperwork and say, well, it's liquid enough and it's safe enough that we can run this thing under a fractional reserve of 50% backing, and we don't feel that there would be a systematic risk to either Bitcoin or the ETF itself, and if the SEC approves, that becomes the new law. So the only thing that's keeping it that way is regulation, and that can change. That's my opinion on it. I don't really know the details of ETFs, just common sense finance experience.
Yeah, in the Winklevoss case specifically, they specifically says that they will have 100% what is represented by the, it could change, but for now, it would be 100%.
If they need to prove it, they could prove it.
They could prove it cryptographically. I don't know if the SEC is sophisticated enough to ask them to do that. Hopefully they will do that now as good business practice. But yeah, for now, they would own 100% of what they say they're going to own.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. Like, again, I'm not into like conspiracy theories. If the regulation approves their ETF and they promise to have 100% backing, it's the SEC job to make sure that it stays that way. And with Bitcoin, it's very, very easy to prove that you are 100% backed, especially you may not like the SEC, but you have to trust them to approve that. Of course, their solution can happen. What worries me is, okay, fine, you have 100% backing of the ETF. There's still a risk of either accidental loss of keys, killing those Bitcoins out of circulation permanently, or a theft of those, that honeypot of Bitcoin, whether externally by an external hacker who could be 14 years old and outskirts of Russia or China, or an internal hacker who, like a disgruntled employee that happens to get his hands on, got some of those key people drunk and found out the passwords, and there you go, and it's gone. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, of course, but it is a risk.
Hi guys, thanks for coming in for a close-up communication. My name is Joseph. Quick introduction of myself. I've been involved with Bitcoin for a couple of years, and I have an interesting thing coming up for everybody. You guys were talking about wallet. I was at the last conference in Miami, as John McCaslin was talking about. Keep your private key safe. Do not trust so much on the cell phone wallet. Using a Trezor or any type of hardware wallet, key, ledger, which I'm going to bring in a new website called Crypto HW Wallet, stands for hardware wallet. I'll bring all 4 brands together, and I'll be offering discounts to everybody in the community. That's under construction. So my question today is on the block size debate. And I actually watched that YouTube video with Tom Hayes and Roger Harris till midnight. I want to see what's going to happen to the price if the chain does split. And to the best of your knowledge, what price prediction. Now, I've introduced a lot of my friends who invest in Bitcoin. I kind of feel burdened if the price crashes after that happens, because I probably will be the first one to get lids on it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think all of us have different answers to that, so I'm going to do a quick answer and then let's go down, get down the panel here. Predicting the price is insanely hard short term, but I stick with my prediction long term, and that is that Bitcoin only has 2 possible endpoint values. It is the moon or the ground. That's the only 2 possible endpoints. Now, as to what will change splits, I don't see that as a big deal, frankly. I mean, we think it's the end of the world and the toxicity in some discussions. But Bitcoin has proven time and time again to be anti-fragile. It's proven to be market-driven. And while we might not always agree with the decisions the market makes, at the end of the day, we believe in the free market. So we can observe that Ethereum split, and there are two communities that each of their own are doing fairly well. And most of the toxicity is gone when everybody is more comfortable doing their thing. So it might not be a bad thing after all. The important thing is that we move ahead, even if in different directions, keep doing our thing, keep increasing adoption, and if we keep increasing adoption, then I'm confident that the end game is going to be good.
Yeah, I think if it splits, it would probably be similar to Ethereum. I mean, although we've had forks from Bitcoin. Anybody can write a fork right now and make it's something called Bitcoin Hopo or whatever, and it would have probably zero value. So it really depends on how the fork works and how much how many people go with one side or the other. So, but it is very hard to do.
Thank you for watching my favorite Roger. There was actually a significantly better debate the following day. There's also a YouTube channel. Johnny from Washington, also the David Roger. He's significantly way more confident than me in all things Bitcoin. So that was a significantly better debate, so please go back and watch that. It's not going to split. I have full confidence that it's not going to split. And there will be one Bitcoin. The market also believes it's not going to split. Because the price of Bitcoin, I think, would be like half it is today. My best guess, if people actually thought it was going to split, I have full confidence that SegWit will be adopted and it will not split. If it does, no, I'm not even entertaining the idea. It won't. I mean, the whole point of Bitcoin is that it's consensus first, and there will be consensus. You can fork off Bitcoin, like several did. Clams is a direct fork of Bitcoin. You can buy it right now in the open market. I think it's worth a few cents. That's what's going to happen. Big blocks would be a hard fork, and they are free to fork at any time. They already tried once. They failed within a few seconds. They are welcome to try again. Anyone can try and fork, but it will not have any value. We're staying where it is.
I think I'd love to link to the party. I'm Roger Beaver. Tone, I heard you say that you thought you were very, very confident that SegWit was going to become activated on the main chain. And again, to be clear, I'm not opposed to any of the things that SegWit, like the things that SegWit fixes are good things to fix. I'm not sure if SegWit's the right way to fix those things, but I'm happy to bet you any amount SegWit's not going to activate. Would you like to take me up that $10,000, $100,000, you name the price, $1,000 a difference bet? I guarantee you it's not activating in its current form. Just this reality thing. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad if it activates, it's not. It's the reality.
I missed the actual bet part, but I can't bet $10,000, so I don't have that kind of money to lose. I already made a bet, right? I made a more important bet. I made a bet that, I can up the ante. The bet that I made was if Bitcoin Unlimited was to become the future of Bitcoin, I would remove myself from being a content creator and a public advocate of Bitcoin. I may be willing to up that ante to removing myself from the public life of Bitcoin if segregated witness is not activated, which is slightly.
Is that a bet or an offer? I'm more than happy to take it up on that.
Well, no, I already have. I've already said.
Just to make it clear for everybody, if SegWit does not activate.
No. I haven't decided if I'm going to up the ante to that. I have said that if Bitcoin Unlimited becomes the dominant fork of Bitcoin, then I would remove myself from the public life of Bitcoin. I may or may not sell my Bitcoin, but I'll remove myself from being a public speaker of Bitcoin if Bitcoin Unlimited is the dominant fork. I am considering upping that ante to if segregated witness is not. Basically, I'm okay with the status quo. But I like nothing changes and Bitcoin code is written in stone and no scaling solution is adopted.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. I haven't decided if I'm going to up my ante to that because I would be okay with the status quo if it came to that. I don't know if I'm willing to base my public persona on Bitcoin in that condition.
Thank you for clarifying. If anybody that missed the debate, keep in mind that Kevin from he said himself he's an occasional user of Bitcoin, rarely uses Bitcoin to the tune of about once per week.
I said that here on this panel too.
I said that here on this panel too. I said that about, I repeated that about 10 minutes ago.
If the block size was raised and we could do more transactions, would that not make Bitcoin more user-friendly for more people?
I believe Segwit is a much more elegant, better, and safer solution than raising the block size, and that's the one that should be adopted first. If segregated witness cannot fully solve all of the problems that Roger is worried about, we can always then form the network to a bigger block if it's absolutely necessary.
So this highlights a little bit of the disagreement within the community, right? I mean, I tend to be firmly in the big block side, but I think it's important to observe two things. And the least important thing to observe here is that Segwit, as it stands, contains a lot of good fixes, but the package as such is hugely controversial. It requires 95% agreement to go through, and there are currently about 20% opposed, which tells me that it's not going to activate by November. It's practically pointless to keep talking about it because it's dead in the water. So let's talk about where we go from here. And I think regardless of whether you stand in the debate, at the end of the day, we all believe in the free market. We all believe in the market forces. We all believe that we should not be sitting here for people deciding whether Segwit should pass or not. We should make the best offering possible to the market and let the market decide.
I gotta agree with Roger on that. Passing 95% is extremely high for anything. If I said, hey, after this meeting, I will give you one full Bitcoin if you meet me in the hall and give me wallet, I bet you I wouldn't get 95%. I'm not, well, I don't want to actually but 95% in anything, even among people who are like-minded people, getting people to agree 95% on anything, anytime is very, very good.
One quick comment, we have about 30 seconds. If Rick is correct and we don't get 95% by November, fine. We'll release it again. We'll set another 3 months or 6 months, and maybe they'll lower it to 90. Maybe they'll lower it to 94. They will keep trying until it's the safest possible way to give Bitcoin scaling.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. And thanks to Roger. Roger was going to be on this panel originally, but you know, hopefully you'll have a chance to see him speak later and check him out online. I think everybody knows Roger. But thanks very much, everybody. This has been a real pleasure.